911, where is your emergency?
We needed an ambulance and a cop at the Travel Lodge on Arthur Road. My friend was just shot. She's laying in the floor. I'm not sure if she's still alive or not.
Okay, I need you to see if she's breathing.
I can't go back up there. We have been kidnapped. We have been kidnapped since yesterday.
Minutes after this 911 call, Beckley PD officers arrived at the Travelodge Hotel and were met with two frantic young women. They tell the officers that on the night prior, they were brought to the hotel along with a third woman who was with them by a group of 4 men who held them in one of the hotel rooms. They say that they were kept in the room against their will all night until earlier that morning. Just before it was time to check out, one of the men took their friend into the adjoining room when they suddenly heard a gunshot. They all rushed into the other room and found their friend lying on the floor with blood leaking from her head. That's when they say the men fled the scene, prompting them to run away and immediately call 911. Officers quickly made their way upstairs to room 48 and entered it with their guns drawn. There were no signs of any of the suspects, but as officers walked into the adjoining room, they found the young woman lying on the floor in the bathroom doorway with a gunshot wound to her head. She was clearly deceased. Homicide detectives arrived within minutes and started questioning the witnesses. The victim was identified as 19-year-old Amber Meadows, who was a local in Beckley, West Virginia. Amber had a bit of a rough start in her life. As a child, her mother wasn't around much, and she never really had a role model to look up to. But other family members had stepped in to help raise her, and they did a pretty good job. They helped bring her up to be a warm, outgoing, and smart young woman. Amber was a straight-A student and excelled at anything she put her mind to. She was on her high school's cheerleading squad and played for the softball team. Amber's future was looking bright, but according to her family, they all started to notice a change in her behavior in recent weeks after she started hanging out with a different crowd. Her family didn't know much about her new friends, but they were aware that she was around some shady characters, some of whom were involved in drugs. The two witnesses tell detectives that they were out with Amber the night before and stopped by a gas station so Amber can use the restroom. While waiting for her in her car, they say the 4 men approached them and asked them where Amber was, and that's when they were all forced back to the hotel with them. The crime scene unit was called in to process the scene, and they found a few interesting clues. In a nearby parking lot where the witnesses fled to call police, they found a white blood-stained hoodie. The witnesses say that it belonged to one of the suspects, the one who shot Amber. Back at the hotel, the room looked disheveled, as if a struggle had taken place. In the adjoining room, Amber was shot in the back of the head. Cigarette butts and beer cans were collected to be swabbed for DNA. Near the body was a bullet fragment lodged in the door frame. On one of the tables, they found what appeared to be a divider, which is commonly found in packages of ammunition. The most interesting clue they found was inside of the trash can. It was a Walmart receipt for gun ammunition. Officers were sent to Walmart to obtain the CCTV footage while detectives continued their investigation. They noticed security cameras installed throughout the hotel property, but when they asked the staff to see the footage, they were told that none of the cameras were actually working. The hotel manager was able to provide detectives with the ID used to book the room, but when they ran the name in their system, they found out that the ID was actually stolen. Detectives shifted their focus to Amber's friends, who've witnessed everything. They were brought into the police station and were asked to share everything they know.
But to the best that you can, if you could just tell us what happened.
The first witness tells detectives that all 3 friends were in Amber's car in the late hours the night before. She says that they pulled into a gas station and parked the car when the 4 men pulled up next to them.
Last night, we was at the gas station. Amber had went in to pee. And the car pulled up, and they all jumped out. And that's where Amber was, and she's the story to the master.
The victim hears one of the suspects being called Laquan by one of the other suspects.
Laquan went in and caught her, and they seemed fine, but they was arguing, a little bit.
The suspects then pressure all 3 of them to return with them to their hotel, which they did.
Once we got upstairs, everything changed.
As soon as they went into the room, Laquan closed the door and his demeanor quickly changed. He pulled out a gun and aggressively told the women that nobody was leaving until he got what he wanted. The women continued to be taunted throughout the night, having guns aimed at their heads with the laser pointers on. She says that most of Laquan's anger was focused on Amber.
We had a fight with her, and he would make her get up and go to the bathroom and made her lay in the tub. Then he would tell her to get out and sit in the chair. Then scream at us a little bit.
Laquan made it known that Amber owed him money and that he wouldn't let anyone leave the room until he got it back.
It was chaos for a long time.
Detectives bring in the second witness, hoping to get more details from her.
Then he pulled out a book bag. The book bag had bullets, guns. He had duct tape. Everybody was in one room where the beds was.
She says that at some point, Laquan took Amber to the adjoining room and they were heard arguing. When the guns suddenly went off, they all ran to the other room to see what happened.
It was like she shot herself. I knew she did. She wouldn't have done that.
That's when the suspects fled and the victims called police. Officers couldn't locate any firearms at the scene, so it was clear that these individuals were still armed and dangerous. The two witnesses identify Laquan as the shooter. They also mentioned that the driver of the car they pulled up in was a white male and that he was referred to as KB. Detectives made their way to the gas station where the women said they were abducted to review their CCTV footage and see if they could get clear images of the suspects. Just before 1 a.m., Amber's car pulls up right outside the entrance to the convenience store. Amber exits the vehicle and walks into the store, then heads straight toward the restroom. Back in the parking lot, her friends wait for her in the car when a red SUV pulls up right next to them. 4 men exit the vehicle. The white male driver walks into the store while the 3 black males walk over to Amber's car. One of the suspects leans into her car and appears to have a conversation with one of the victims. He then turns around and heads into the store. When he spots the women's restroom where Amber currently is, he briefly looks around and then walks inside. He's in there for just a few seconds before walking back out with Amber and escorting her out of the store. Just before they exit, the suspect turns, giving detectives a glimpse of what he looks like, but the video wasn't clear enough to make a positive identification. In the parking lot, one of the suspects appears to be wearing a white hoodie, possibly the same one the victims had taken with them. The suspect takes off the hoodie and hands it to the other suspect who escorted Amber outside, and he puts it on. Amber then gets back into her car, and one of the suspects is told to get in with her to make sure that she doesn't go anywhere. The suspect appears to get aggressive as he leans into Amber's car and starts waving and pointing his fingers. Amber then suddenly reverses her car, hitting the suspect with her door, and then she does it again. As she tries to pull off, the suspect gets in her way and pounds the hood, and then walks over to the passenger side as he appears to scold her. He then returns to the red SUV, and both vehicles exit the lot with Amber leading the way. They headed straight to the hotel. Police now have an idea of what the suspects look like, and they know that they're looking for a red Jeep Grand Cherokee that's likely owned by the white suspect, who is referred to as KB. Detectives went over to Amber's house to speak with her family. They learned that around the time they started noticing changes in Amber's behavior, they became increasingly concerned as she grew more and more distant from them. They also learned that Amber had a boyfriend, but there was no evidence to suggest that he was involved in any way. Detectives shift their focus to their only remaining lead, the Walmart receipt. The Walmart was able to provide limited information, namely the date of birth on the ID used to purchase the ammo. It turned out to be the same date of birth as the one on the stolen ID that was used to book the hotel room. Luckily for police, Walmart has CCTV cameras installed all around their stores, and their picture quality is as good as it gets. They start playing the footage from the camera by the gun counter, just before the purchase was made. Three black males approach the counter and start pointing to the items they want to see. They seem excited and end up purchasing 2 boxes of ammo, which they paid for in cash. The man paying for the ammo has long dreadlocks and looks very similar to the suspect who went into the gas station bathroom to get Amber. Police are confident that it's the same person. What detectives really need right now is a good look at the suspects' faces. They switch to the cameras installed at the exit, waiting for them to appear, and they find exactly what they were looking for. They switched to the camera in the parking lot to see if they could get a plate number from the car. But the suspects walk through the lot and out onto the street, where they all get into a dark-colored vehicle and leave. It's clearly not the red SUV they were in on the night of the murder, and there's no sign of the white male either. They rewind the footage to just before the suspects entered the store and spot that same car pulling up near the entrance and letting out the 3 suspects. After they enter the store, a white male exits the vehicle and walks toward the entrance. Police suspect this to be KB, the same white male who was seen at the gas station. Detectives now have clear images of all 4 suspects that they could use to identify them, and it wasn't long before they had a name. A local deputy recognized the white male as Caleb Bird and says that he'd seen him driving that same red Jeep before. Detectives are confident that Caleb Bird is in fact KB, and quickly track him down to his parents' house. Officers arrested Caleb and brought him in to get his side of the story. At first, Caleb tries to make it seem like he was an unwilling participant and attempts to distance himself from the other suspects as if he wasn't involved.
There's 3 individuals that are involved. I'm not cutting you off to be mean, but I want to stop you right there just for a second and explain something to you, okay? We can't do that part where you just said there's 3 individuals that are involved. No. You see what I'm saying?
He quickly finds out that police have a mountain of evidence against him and starts naming names.
Tyree and there's a guy named Shaka. I don't know his real name. That's his street name. What do you know about him? I don't know much about him. I've only been around him 2 or 3 times, honestly. And then there's David Hudson.
Caleb tells police that David Hudson goes by his middle name, Laquan, the same person that witnesses identified as the one who pulled the trigger. He says that on the night of the murder, he was driving around with the 3 other suspects in his car. Laquan was sitting up front in the passenger seat and told him to pull into the gas station after he spotted Amber's car there.
I go inside, and then they went over and talked to her, and I went back to my car. He was intimidating her a little bit, talking to her. Because, and then was he accusing her of the... Yeah. Okay. And then he started hugging on her, gave her a kiss. Okay. And so I thought it was all cool. We're there a little while longer. Tyreek gets in the vehicle with them, Hudson and Shaka. They got in my vehicle, and we followed them to the travel lodge.
Caleb says that everything seemed fine until they all went back to the hotel room. He says that as soon as the door was closed, everything suddenly changed.
And just talking about something being taken, trying to intimidate her. He's flashing guns at him, and he was pulling back the hammer, putting it up to her head, and intimidating her, making her cry.
At some point, Caleb says he saw Amber getting nervous and tried reassuring her that she wouldn't get hurt.
And I said, "It's empty." And they said, "No, it ain't. No, it ain't. No, it ain't." Bow. And it went off right in front of my face.
Police now have the names of the other 3 suspects. They quickly locate 2 of them, Tyreek Pearl and Antonio Williams, aka Shaka. The triggerman, David Laquan Hudson, is still at large. Officers were sent to the homes of everyone he was known to associate with to try and locate him. Later that day, however, he walked into the station to turn himself in. Police sit him down and try to get his side of the story, but Laquan refuses to talk. Fortunately for police, they had overwhelming evidence against him. In addition to the multiple witnesses who identified Laquan as the shooter, the hoodie that he was seen on camera putting on just before going to the hotel had Amber's blood on it and was consistent with blowback from a shot at close range. Laquan maintained his innocence and never came clean about what happened. Based on information they've gathered, police believe that he was involved in a transaction with someone who knew Amber and was never paid what he was owed. When he spotted Amber that night, he brought her and her friends back to his hotel room and held them there against their will. After they were all inside, he shut the door, placed a chair behind it, and had one of his accomplices sit in it to make sure that nobody leaves. He spent the night taunting Amber and telling her that he'd kill her if he didn't get what he was owed, and he never did. Detectives believe that by the next morning, he'd threatened to kill her so many times that he felt that if he didn't follow through with it, his reputation would take a hit. So he took Amber into the other room and ordered her into the bathroom. As she turned around to walk inside, he shot her in the back of the head, killing her instantly. Antonio Williams pleaded guilty to kidnapping and voluntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 20 years. Tyreek Pearl and Caleb Bird both pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit kidnapping and murder. They both avoided prison time in exchange for providing their testimonies. David Laquan Hudson fought his case and lost. He was found guilty of 3 counts of kidnapping, use of a firearm, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and first-degree murder. He was handed 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole.